Hey everyone, welcome back to a brand new deck profile. Today we're going to be talking about my Regigigas build in Expanded. Now in Expanded you're going to see a lot of very degenerate Regigigas decks, not to like shade on those things, but their basic win con is I'm going to win the game turn 1 going second, and you have no way to come back. The kind of things that use Magical Miracle GX on Gardevoir Sylveon or the Umbreon Darkrai Dark Moon GX to just basically make it so your opponent can't win the game. And I don't think those kind of decks are very fun, personally. So I decided to go for a more straightforward approach to the Regi concept and build around just the Regi Pokemon in general. Which ones are the best, which ones aren't, you know, to try to attack with them. So this is more just my list. If you want to, you know, build a list around that, there's better videos for that. This is just the way that I decided to build it. So starting off, the goal goes around this concept, Ancient Wisdom. If you have Regirock, Ice, Steel, Regieleki, and Regidrago in play, you can attach up to 3 energy, including special, from your Scapile to one of your Pokemon. So you can attach to any of these guys. I have attacked with Dedenne before to Tingly Return. I have attacked with Tapu Lele before to use Energy Drive. And then obviously we have our tertiary attacker there. But you're mainly going to be attacking with the Regis. Starting off with Regigigas with a great attack, 5 energy, which is a bit of a stretch, but Gigaton Break does 150. If your opponent's active as a Pokemon VMAX, 150 more. We play in our energy line 2 powerful colorless energy, which boosts your damage by 20 on specifically only Regigigas, meaning that even if you prize one, you can still one-hit KO a Shadow Rider VMAX, and that's what the goal is. I played 3 copies. You could go down to 2. This is a very arguable spot. I like having 3 because it's sometimes nice to have 2 in play when you have a Sky Field in play and have an expanded bench. So you can get that extra kind of oomph by powering up a second attack. You're kind of saying checkmate to your opponent. Now we have 2 copies of Regirock here. Regirock is an arguable spot. I went with this Regirock. It's the one from Astral Radiance, the one that was kind of meant to go in this combo. And the reason I went with it is twofold. 1, it has the Regigate attack, which is quite good, and 2, it has the Giga Impact attack, which is quite good. Giga Impact notably one-hit KOs many fighting weak Pokemon, such as Zoroark and Greninja, Arceus V-Star, among others, and that's a really big thing, especially with Hisui and Zoroark looking to be a quite good deck and Expanded. I imagine to see many fighting weak Pokemon in the future. Regirock is just a good way at just a fighting hit. There is some other Regirock to consider though, so I figure I will go over those if you want to change it for your list. The main one you might want to consider is the Regirock with the Ancient Trait Barrier. Now the main problem with this is that it is about 40 packs to get one, very expensive card. Whenever your opponent plays a trainer card, it does not affect this Pokemon, so they can't like Boss's Orders or Guzma it or Crushing Hammer it. Landmaker is quite good. You put 2 Stadium cards from your Scapile into your hand. Would be really good in this deck, honestly, so I could see why you'd use it. Stone Edge, not a very good attack. You would not use Stone Edge. Landmaker, though, I could see the value in playing the card specifically for Landmaker, and I think if you want to either do 2 of this Regirock or 1-1 split, that could be very valid. I think a 1-1 split would be actually very good, but I also like this Regirock quite a bit. It's won me so many games. 2 copies of Reg Ice. This is just inarguable. You're going to use this Reg Ice because it has the Icy Barrier. As long as you're active, your opponent can't play any Stadium cards. This is the Pokemon you want in your active if you're not attacking. You want to block your opponent playing things like Chaotic Swell and counter stadiums like Silent Lab that can severely damage your setup. Chaotic Swell is the main issue with this deck, though. If your opponent uses a Chaotic Swell, a lot of times it can set you back for a while, especially if you have a liability in play already. The attack's also not terrible. 1 water, 2 colorless, 60 in sleep. It's okay. I've used it to get me out of some tight binds, but realistically you're never going to use the attack that much. This is another arguable spot. 2 copies of the Registeel from Astral Radiance. There is another Registeel that we're going to talk about. The reason I play this other than the Regigate attack, again, the Regigate attack is just good. Getting to, if you have nothing else, searching for a basic, you search for another Regi piece, and then this guy presumably dies. But if you're just ending your turn doing nothing anyway, you might as well get a basic so you don't lose your whole board setup. The reason I play this is for Heavy Slam, which does 220 minus 50 for each colorless in your opponent's retreat cost. It's not amazing is the thing, because if your opponent has like even 2 retreat, you're doing 120, which can be good. You still one-hit KO some weak Pokemon V that have type weakness. Also, the art on this thing's horrendous, by the way. The main reason I use Heavy Slam is because of the prominence of Float Stone in the expanded format. And I see a lot of people using the other Registeel, but I don't think it has the same utility. The other Registeel, let's just go look it up real quick. The other Registeel people are mainly using is, it'd be awesome if we could use the old Regis. These ones are great. Love those guys. Is this one, and it's quite good. It does 120, just base, if your opponent has an ability, quite strong. And then takes 20 less damage from attacks, which obviously, if you're facing something that's spreading, that could be quite good. The main reason I play this, though, is, like I said, because of Float Stone, and you hit 220 on any Pokemon with a Float Stone attached. It means you're KOing Shadow Riders with a Float Stone attached. You're killing basically anything that's a V with a Float Stone attached, any EXs or basic GXs that are not tag teams with a Float Stone attached, and that's very valuable. That's helped me in a lot of games. I could see why you'd play the other one, but I think this one is better. Also, the Regigate is also just a great attack in the early game. It does have 10 more HP, but obviously the ability on the other one's better. 2 copies of Regieleki. This Regieleki is like infinitely better. We'll look at the other one just so I can show you. It has popped up in some standard versions of the deck. You put a trainer card and Prism Pile into your hand. Not terrible. Could be useful again for getting back Sky Field or Computer Search maybe. Discard 2 lightning from your hand, 120 snipe. You don't need that. You're not going to be sniping that, or you're not going to be gusting that much with this deck. You're usually just taking out what's in front of you. But the reason Regieleki is so good is because of its Terra Spark. 120, discard all lightning, does 40 to your opponent's bench Pokemon. This basically guarantees if you can chain Regielekis, you win any single prize mirror match. It's that simple. I have played so many mirror matches against, or not mirror matches, so many single prize matches against other one prize decks. Think the ones that you see in Expanded often are like Leon's Art, not a good deck, but you do see it often. Mad Party is still around. You'll see one prize counter decks that use counter energy. You'll see other Regi decks. Regieleki is really the differentiating factor in those matchups because you can take eventually slowly over the point of the game multiple KOs and turn the prize trade in your favor as long as they're not like abusing life dew. It's also great against stall decks if you can take out dolls and hit their active at the same time. Taking out 2 dolls is a lot of times very oppressive if they don't have a bench protector. This won me a game against the doll stall deck because they had a very weak setup and I was able to take 2 prizes and kill a doll at one time, basically leaving them with nothing on board. So Regieleki is great. Regidrago, there is another one here, but it's also bad. You use it for the ability, mainly Dragon's Horde. If it's in the active, you can draw until you have 4 in hand. And with Float Stone, it's easy to pivot out of the active, unlike the standard version of the deck. And its attack is just straight 160. I've used the attack before. It's not bad. The other Regidrago is a lot of times very appealing to people because it does 240 damage, which is very solid, obviously. 240 is quite good. The thing is that it's conditional 240, and it doesn't have Dragon Horde. And Dragon Horde is really the reason you play this. Dragon Horde is a great ability. I would not play the other one because of Dragon Horde is just too good. 1 copy of Crobat to draw cards. When you play it, draw cards until you have 6 in hand. You can actually use the attack, so we do have to talk about it. 1 dark, 1 colorless, 70 in poison. It's the worst attack in the deck. Don't use that. Dedenne-GX is actually quite good, occasionally as attacker. You mainly play it for day-to-day change, though. When you play it from your hand onto your bench, you may discard your hand, draw 6. So it's a great draw engine Pokemon. 250 is terrible. Don't use that attack. If you're attacking with Dedenne, and I have done this several times, it's to use Tinkly Return GX. You don't really have a dedicated GX attack that you want to use, so you can do 50 if you're taking a knockout with it, bonus points, but it also just gets a 2 prize liability off your field if that would be your opponent's win con. Let's just say they had a Pokemon that you needed to do some extra damage to, but they had 2 prizes, and if they have the Gust for Dedenne, they win. You clear Dedenne off the board, give them something to hit into, or even like a Reg Ice to block their stadiums. Big brain play right there. And then take away their win con while giving that extra damage. It's helped me in many situations before. One copy of Tapu Lele for the Wonder Tag ability. When you play it from your hand into your bench, search your deck for a supporter. This is probably the least useful of the 3 supporter Pokemon. It's also good for energy drive, though. I have used it several times. It does 20 for the amount of energy attached to both active Pokemon. With 1 Regigigas, you can just power up 3 DCs onto a Tapu Lele, and then you are doing, what, 120 with energy drive without any math on your opponent. It can wipe out some bigger threats. If your opponent has a lot of energy on a Pokemon, you can like bench 2 Regigigas, double Ancient Wisdom, and get potentially on your side just a, what would that be, 180 damage on your Lele. And then if they're facing something like a Centiskorch and they have a bunch of energy on too, you can take a big KO there. You don't see that too often, but it is something you can do. For the final piece of the attacking line, we have amazing rare Yveltal. And its attack cost is a bit awkward, but the attack literally KOs anything that's not immune to effects of ability. So this deck does just lose to Mewtwo v Union. There's nothing you can do about that. Mewtwo v Union does just one-hit KO you. But what you do with Yveltal is you use this as kind of your Swiss Army knife for everything you can't deal with. Tag teams are a big problem for this deck because if you can't hit weakness on something like Arceus, Dialga, and Palkia, for instance, you don't really want to be two-shotting that, you want to be one-hit killing that. Yveltal gives you that option. Now, obviously, as I said, you cannot power this up with 1 Ancient Wisdom, so you have to either do Ancient Wisdom attack, or you have to be behind on prizes. And I'm just going to talk about this right now. We played 1 copy of Counter Energy for this exact scenario. If you're behind on prizes, you can use Ancient Wisdom attaching Counter, DC, and Prism, and it will pay for your amazing Destruction attack. Obviously, knocking anything out is great. Your opponent has to KO Yveltal if it uses this attack because your opponent cannot take multiple of these attacks. And so they have to KO Yveltal, meaning they're leaving your whole Regi pieces on board, because obviously you have to use the Regi pieces to power this up. So they can't touch your Regi pieces, and they have to KO a Pokemon that you're like, sure, go ahead and KO it. See if I care. Because Yveltal's already done its job if it's in the active spot. It's quite great. I didn't have this in the original list, but when I put it in, the deck just works so much better. It really just patches all of the holes that the deck has. All the matchups that are bad, stuff like that. 4 copies of Juniper, discard your hand, draw 7. It's the best discard support. Draw 7 cards. You want to discard these, and you want to draw lots of cards. 1 copy of Guzma for gusting. You have Verse Seeker to get back, so 1 copy is okay. You could go to 2. I like 1. Switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon if they're active, then switch your active with one of your bench. You want to use this over Lysander in this specific deck because you can get some extra points with Dragon Horde, and pivoting into a Float Stone pivot that you have set up on the board is also good. If your opponent tries to trap, stall one of the heavier pieces that just can't move, and you have energy attached already, or don't have the full Regi combo in play. 1 copy of N, each player shuffles a hand into the deck, then each player draws a card for each of his or her remaining prize cards. You do this because you want a shuffle draw option, so if you draw into 3 or 4 of these really important pieces, or this in your hand, sometimes you don't really want to discard all of those because your win con can become really hard. A lot of your games that you do lose with this deck aren't because you lose naturally from your opponent taking 6 prizes. You lose because you run out of things like Rescue Stretcher versus Seeker and Sky Field, these necessary pieces that the deck needs to keep on going. And if you get Silent Lab locked and you have no Sky Fields remaining, it's kind of just game over. 1 copy of Ninja Boy. You choose a Pokemon in play, search your deck for a Pokemon, and then choose a basic Pokemon in play, search your deck for a basic, and switch it with all cards. There's some plays you could do where you could potentially switch out, a charged up Pokemon for a Yveltal. I have done that before. I mainly use this to get my liabilities off the field so that I can't be locked under a 5 bench and then have a liability on the field. If that happens, Ninja Boy's an out. It can also, like I said, if you have just a 3 energy attacker, your opponent doesn't KO it, and then you just attach another energy Ninja Boy into Yveltal. It's a play you can do. 1 copy of Teammates. You can only play this if one of your Pokemon is knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Search your deck for up to 2 cards, put them into your hand. It's great because you're getting knocked out almost all of the time. So you can use this to just get whatever 2 combo pieces you need. 4 copies of Quick Ball. Discard a card from your hand, search for a basic. It's a no-brainer to play a copy in this deck. Or 4 copies. 1 copy of Ultra Ball. I used to run this as a 3 of. I don't think you need that anymore. Discard 2 cards from your hand, search your deck for a Pokemon. The discard synergy is awesome in the early game, but in the late game it can get a bit oppressive. So what I actually cut the second Ultra Ball for is a Battle VIP Pass, which you can only use during your first turn, but it sets up 2 basic Pokemon on your bench. And the reason you do this does give you less outs to these useful Pokemon, and a lot of times after turn 1, Battle VIP Pass is dead. But it's not hurting your deck too much, only playing 1 copy. But on that first turn, it is computer searchable, and if you draw into it, it really helps you kind of get that turn 1 setup. This deck can attack turn 1 going second and get a big, one-hit KO off. That's not always going to happen. This deck does have a lot of inconsistencies as to, having a Pokemon with like an Exodia-esque setup here. There's going to be some inconsistencies. There's going to be a lot of prizing issues that occasionally come up. But if you get one Battle VIP Pass, you get it, and your game's great. If you don't, it's not the end of the world, and it's just 1 card in your deck. It's not 4 spaces, and you're not getting like Marnied into 4 VIP passes and having to scoop. 2 copies of Heavy Ball, look at your face down prizes, reveal a basic, and put it into your hand. This gets you literally every Pokemon in the deck. So, why not just go get any Pokemon out of the prizes? These pieces are important, so, you can get them. A tip when you're using your deck search cards is that if you have a Hisui Ball in hand, obviously just use it right away, but if you don't, you often want a quick ball for the Pokemon that are prized, and you know which ones are prized because they're all 2 counts besides Gigas. You often want to quick ball search, well, for Reg Ice first if all things are normal, and Regidrago second if all things are normal. But you often want to get these Pokemon that are prized because they're one-ofs and they're harder to draw into off of something like a Juniper, Raw Draw, Dedenne, and Crobat. So you use your specific search to find those. Sometimes, obviously, that can backfire if you draw into Hisui and Heavy Ball, but rather safe than sorry. 1 copy of Computer Search, discard 2 cards from hand, search deck for a card, put it into your hand. This is the A-spec of choice. You could run Dowsing Machine too, and it would work. Maybe Life Dew. I wouldn't do Life Dew. I like this as the A-spec of choice, though, like I said, Dowsing Machine could be sick. If you Dowsing Machine for VIP Pass, that'd be pretty sick, but Computer Search also just gives you a second out to VIP Pass turn 1, so ideally I think Computer Search better. Computer Search gets you stadiums, gets you tools, anything in the deck you want. Usually you're searching VIP Pass, Stadium, Tool, Rescue Stretcher, versus Seeker, Battle Comp. Like, these items are like your most valuable pieces. Speaking of Battle Comp, search your deck for 3 cards and discard them. You want to discard your energies. Sometimes you can use the synergy with putting Pokemon back with the Rescue Stretcher to put a Pokemon in the discard pile, and that's often good, though you don't want to overuse your Rescue Stretchers. You can discard Sporters and get them back with First Seeker. It's a great card. You could potentially run 4 of. I don't know really what to cut for a 4th Battle Comp, though, and I usually don't find myself needing 4. Usually it's just, dang, I didn't draw into them early enough. 4 copies of Rescue Stretcher, put a Pokemon from your discard pile into your hand, or shuffle 3 into your deck. Running any less than this really makes the deck feel awkward, so I put 4. I finally, made that tough choice and put a 4th Rescue Stretcher in here, and I've been thankful ever since, because a lot of the games I lost were because I only had 3, and I had to discard 2 really early in order to set up. So 4 copies of Rescue Stretcher, absolutely necessary. You need to get Pokemon back. A lot of times you're discarding them in the early game for the optimal setup with Dedenne, Quick Ball, Ultra Ball, and Juniper. So you need those pieces. Your opponent, if they know you're out of Rescue Stretchers, can just target down very specific pieces of the combo, like all of your 1 piece, and then you just kind of run out of steam because you can't use your Ancient Wisdom. 3 copies of VS Seeker, put a Sporter card from this pile into your hand. I don't think you need 4. It allows you to get a couple Guzmas off if need be, use 1 or 2 Ninja Boy, maybe use a Teammates. Most of the time you're just going to be Junipering, but you want the ability to tech these guys out, and it gives you synergy with Battle Compressor as well. 3 copies of Float Stone gives your Pokemon no retreat. Use this to pivot with Regidrago and Reg Ice mainly. I have made Regi pivots when, I just have to attach to it early. A lot of times you'll make a pivot out of basically anything but Regieleki you want to turn into a pivot out of the Regi lines. You don't want to attach to these guys because you want them off of your field, and often you're going to discard them when your Sky Field gets bumped. But Float Stone is obviously good. All these Pokemon are very high retreat cost, and you want to be able to pivot them around. Scoop Up Net's an option. I don't think Scoop Up Net's that good in the deck, though, because it gives you very limited uses. 3 copies of Sky Field. Each player can have 8 Pokemon. So you need this because, obviously, you have these guys. that you always want to have in play, but then you also want to play these liability Pokemon to draw cards, and you sometimes need to play Yveltal. You cannot play all of these Pokemon down at once, though, so be careful. That could be a reason to cut Lele, potentially, is to have the perfect round of 8 Pokemon that you can have in play at once. I still think Lele is valuable for teching Guzma, Ninja Boy, and Juniper in a pinch. So, moving on, we have 4 copies of Prism. This counts as any Rainbow Energy but attached to a basic, but your entire deck's basic, so it's Rainbow attached to everything. I would not play Rainbow because obviously that lowers your HP. I would not play Aurora because you have to discard cards. Prism is the best option here. 3 copies of DCE provides 2 colorless. You use this for Regigigas. Use this for Reg Ice if you're tagging with that. It's mainly just for Regigigas, but another huge... Oh yeah, and also Yveltal. Another big thing that I've realized with this deck is that it's great for Regieleki, because what you can do is use Ancient Wisdom onto Regieleki, pick 2 Prisms and a DCE, and put them onto Regieleki, and then after you Terra Spark, it'll discard the 2 Prisms, but then you'll still have the DCE, so you can get a free pivot into whatever your next attacker is going to be, if any. So that's what I a lot of times do when I'm attacking Regieleki, as long as I don't need the DCs elsewhere. 2 copies of Powerful Colorless, as I discussed at the beginning. It's to boost your Regigigas' damage, so it KOs VMAXs. You don't play like Choice Belt or anything like that. Powerful Colorless is just better in this case, and it's reusable as well. Can also pay for the colorless attack cost when you're not using Regigigas on the other guys, and that's perfectly fine too, but usually you'll want to use DC in that case. 1 copy of Counter Energy is mainly for Yveltal, but it's honestly useful on a lot of these Pokemon. Again, the whole DCE Regieleki situation. If you still have that DCE on and you're behind on prizes, throw a Counter Energy on and there's another Terra Spark. And you can Ancient Wisdom elsewhere. But really, it's just for Yveltal, and it can be used for these guys. It's less useful in those cases. A lot of times it just ends up paying a colorless attack cost in the early game, and then maybe use it once or twice in the late game. It can obviously pay these, but by the late game you usually have Prism Energy. It's mainly just for Yveltal. So anyway, that's my Regigigas deck. I want to take a more straightforward approach, a little bit less of the degeneracy. Maybe that's the way you want to go down, is just removing your opponent's hand turn 1. But I really like kind of the straightforward Regi concept. It's one of my favorite strategies that Pokemon's made in a long time. They definitely didn't consider the expanded format and when printing these cards, but that's fine. Because we get to have plenty of fun with them in expanded, and that's what it's all about. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next deck profile or tabletop.